Hello, I'm meteorologist Ted Keller, and here is today's severe weather outlook. It is still a very active pattern well into August, a little unusual, but where it is not unusual. You can see on the supercell composite today from Northern Illinois University, high percentages, the highest percentage you can get of a supercell, 30% on this scale, is all this darker red area that stretches from Nebraska all the way over to West Virginia, includes basically the Corn Belt, almost the definition of it, and also the lower Great Lakes states. So that's a good kind of summary. And of that, this really applies to today, tomorrow, and also probably Wednesday. So let's get into those details. So the Storm Prediction Center does daily outlook projections. Here's today's, and they have level 2 areas, 4 of them actually, Phoenix to roughly Tucson, out there in the intersection of Colorado and Nebraska and Kansas. And then these two swaths here are more connected to the more powerful jet stream winds. We have this area here and this sweeping area here, all part of the same general kind of feel. Let's zoom in on this. So here's the level 2 for the South Dakota region, parts of Iowa and Minnesota. Also gives you a closer look at that area there around just east of Sterling. And we'll get back to this one in a second here. How does this break down by threat? Well, up here, there doesn't appear to be any or much of a tornado risk, but a severe wind risk is definitely being forecast from the SPC for this area, with the hatched area, an attempt at classifying intensity. And you can see here the percentage chance of getting the various wind gust in categories, basically. So a really high percentage chance this is going to stay below 75 miles per hour on a maximum wind gust, and more than a 50-50 chance it'll be in that 59 to 63 mile per hour wind gust area. There's also a hail risk up here too, centered on basically South Dakota, and especially the central and northern part of the state. And again, an intensity 1 here. And if you're wondering what the yellow means, that's just a percentage chance of a severe hailstone, which just has to be 1 inch or greater within 25 miles, 15% chance. And then the hatching is, well, how big would these hailstones get? So they don't always match. What that means is there's a high probability of hail here, but all of this area has an equal percentage chance of getting what happens over here. So most of this is going to stay below 1.5 inches, and certainly below 2 inches, it looks like. So not really out of control on the hail. So here's that second area of slight risk here. That is a wide swath from central Illinois, covering most of Indiana, all of Ohio for all practical purposes, all of really Pennsylvania, and slivers of Maryland and West Virginia, even going into New Jersey, stopping just shy of New York. Now, of course, there's a marginal risk surrounding that, so severe weather is possible anywhere where that darker green goes up to the yellow. Okay, just a little bit of a more enhanced risk, even though there's a name for that. That's 3. So slight risk is what they call the level 2. How does that break down by event here? So this does have a tornado category that breaks into 2% chance of any strength tornado here. No hatched areas, so SPC has no confidence in trying to determine intensity on this. And so we're also looking at this little patch over here from Washington up to New York, including Philadelphia, of a 2% chance of a tornado. They are concerned about wind, although no hatched area out here, but a higher percentage of a 59 mile per hour gust or higher exists around Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and those areas north and northeast of those areas. Now, on the tornado cast for today, NATO cast, they do have South Dakota painted in a 3% chance, and also from Rockford through the Chicago area, Kankakee on over into northern Indiana, another 3% risk, kind of a blotchy appearance. Another one just centered right there on Pittsburgh, PA. On the wind side of NATO cast, they do have a higher percentage here, a 45 to 60% chance of severe winds up here in the corridor from roughly New York to the nation's capital. And even a little hatched area there is saying it could be 65 knots, 75 miles per hour or greater in that small little area of Maryland right there. And then we'll take a look, of course, at CSU for completeness sake. They put the tornado threat from Chicago over into PA, including central and northern Iowa, northern Indiana, and a little bit of a hail risk back here where the SPC highlighted that. And they're, again, pretty confident about the wind risk like the SPC is, but not real confident about NATO cast version of that. That put the higher percentages right here. And you know, I'd have to go back and check, but it sure seems like that might be. I'm just wondering if that's stuck, because even though the date shows up right on NATOcast, I don't know if it's actually working because it doesn't line up very well with this forecast. Anyway, I'll research that. On the severe thunderstorm risk for Tuesday, a large corridor from the Dakotas all the way to the coastal areas of Virginia and Delaware, with the highest percentage categorical chance in the level 2 area, again from central and northern Illinois, sweeping back to basically Virginia, including all of West Virginia, a good chunk of Ohio. Tornado risk is 2% included in that area too. Basically, it defines the slight risk area to a real rough extent. So does the wind risk for Tuesday, and they do have a categorized intensity parameter on that one. Again, severe winds mostly going to stay below the 75 mile per hour wind gust, but about a 1 1/3 chance it'll be somewhere between 64 and 74 mile per hour wind gusts in this hatched area here. Otherwise, the yellow is 15%. I did look at the tornado risk on StormNet for today. It didn't show up very focused, but for tomorrow, Tuesday, it does. So Huntington, West Virginia, Charleston are right here. So this area here of kind of extreme northeast Kentucky and parts of West Virginia is up to 30-some percent chance from 7 p.m. Tuesday to 7 a.m. So an evening, maybe overnight event for those areas, according to StormNet's analysis of that. CSU for Tuesday does have that tornado risk a little bit north of what I just showed you, Ohio, but pretty close to where SPC has, not as far back to the west. And they have that wind risk over here from southern Ohio into the heart of Virginia, including West Virginia. And then on Wednesday, we really kind of leave this alone, although I think there still might be room for activity here to be enhanced, maybe up to level 2 before we get to Wednesday. But they already are pulling a trigger on that there in parts of Nebraska and South Dakota, with CSU putting the tornado risk again Wednesday out here around West Virginia and Ohio. Not much of a hail risk to speak of, and then the wind risk, kind of a broad category. I do want to point out that on Thursday, even though the SPC has not shown anything yet, I do want to show you this corridor here. It was always kind of showing up over here in Virginia and the Carolinas, but this little narrow area here now is new. So Missouri and Kansas and parts of Illinois and Indiana have a 15% chance, according to CSU, of any type of severe weather. And then finally on Friday, that does shift more to the Carolinas pretty much. And then we'll finally finish out the NIU probabilities for supercells. Week 2, same corridor. So that's probably impresses me more that the pattern is staying roughly the same, even though these percentages do change. And that's the 17th through the 23rd of August. And then for the week 3, which is the 24th through the 30th, almost at the end of the month, again, kind of a clustering of weaker supercell percentages up there, seemingly centered on the Dakotas and on over into Minnesota and Wisconsin.